All right, so not a first-time security conference presenter, but a first-time ShmooCon presenter. I would like you all to give Estelle a warm welcome, who will be presenting on C2 operators infecting themselves. So please give Estelle a warm welcome.
Hello. Yes, I think you all guys can hear me loud and clear. Okay, great. So I'll be the one presenting you probably the tale of the most interesting Stealer logs I've researched on. The research was done with a colleague of mine, Stuart Beck, which sadly couldn't be here today, but if he's watching the stream, I would say hi. Oh, forgot about the animation. This means I will be the one entertaining you for the next 20 minutes or so while you slowly digest your lunch. So yeah. So here in Flare, we collect various data, and amongst them we collect Stealer logs. For those of you who are not familiar with it, it's the product of Stealer malware, which is a type of malware that when it infects a compromised device, it then extracts all the valuable data, like login credentials, cookies, or even wallets, to then sell them or even use them for further exploitation. And here at Flare we thought, what if we had some Stealer logs of bad guys? What if those who were operating the malwares accidentally got infected themselves? Which would be basically the players played at their own game. Before going into the interesting facts, I wanted to give you guys a little technical context so you understand everything I will be saying. What is a C2 server, or a command and control server? So basically they're just a web server. So when an attacker infects a victim, here Bob, sorry to all the Bob potentially out there, no hard feelings. Once the malware has struck on the victim's device, it will act as a beacon, and the beacon will communicate with the C2. So it initiates a channel for persistence, and once it is initiated, the attacker can basically issue any command, and it will act on the victim's device. What I want you all to remember of that is that a C2 is a web server, something that you access on the web, meaning that when an attacker would be infected by Stealer, the C2 server will show on the Stealer log, and then we can see it. And that's what we want to leverage, to see if C2 operators also fell victim to their own skims. Basically the bitter bit. The data we use for that, we fetched more than 4,000 Stealer logs from our database, all of which had at least accessed once one popular Black Hat forum that you can see displayed on the screen. Once we had our pool of potential bad guys, we needed some known C2 host names to check them, because the thing with Stealer logs is we can sometimes have several hundred credentials to check, and obviously they're not all suspicious, so you have to filter them. To do so, we first leverage Beck, which is a C2 tracker, allowing you to get data dumps of known C2 host names verified through IUC fingerprinting. Using Beck, we were able to access more than 11,000 known C2 host names. And it was, yes, a reliable foundation to do the checking, but we thought, why not use them to identify some more? As you may know, C2 operates almost identically to the original malware device they use, which means they can share some HTML and DOM content. So if they are spread across the whole web, if you look behind the scene, they will practically look identical because they use the same server setup. Leveraging URL scans feature to do some DOM content matching, using our known host from Beck, who were able to identify 8,000 more C2 host names. Using our Stealer logs and C2 host database, we tried to see if anything matched, and bingo. Using our known C2 database, we went from thousands to just a few. To be precise, we found and flagged 5 Stealer logs having accessed at least one known C2 hostname. The infected devices were located in Ukraine, Iran, Italy, the Netherlands, and in Hong Kong. They were all infected between September 2023 and April 2024, and all 5 users were operating on Windows 10 or 11 with either a Pro version or an Enterprise version. 2 of them had been infected by the Rhadamanthus info stealer, one by Luma, another one by Redline, and the last one we couldn't really figure out which family was responsible for the infection. 4 stealer logs had accessed only one C2 hostname, a known C2 hostname, while the last one had access to 3 different ones. Then we started looking at the accesses, basically the domains these devices were accessed. Here you're looking at a network linking extensions in red, second level domain in green, and full domain in blue. So everything that was accessed on the infected device, you can see in there. What's interesting is, after the .com extension, it's .ir, which is for Iranian websites, and .cn, which is for Chinese websites, that were the most visited among our 5 stealer logs. And even more interesting, we had 12 accesses to the Chinese National Government Services Platform. So we had access to transportation, social security number, even the human resources of the Beijing municipality were accessed in those logs. Continuing on the website accessed by those 5 stealer logs, we found some shared interest in web development first, also hacking, because they all accessed those cybercrime forums I talked about earlier. They all used Discord, GitHub, and Dash.Cloudflare as well. They had a common interest in cryptocurrency and trading. And as a last thing, the stealer logs accessing mainly .ir and .cn had a recurring theme of operating bots and like services for social media such as Instagram. And while we were examining those stealer logs, we began to have some serious suspicions, because 4 out of 5 of them had several hundred credentials, meaning they had accessed more than 100 different websites, and the majority of them were all quote-unquote normal or daily life related, meaning like a Gmail account, a Netflix account, or shopping like Amazon account. In contrast, the last stealer logs only had about 30 credentials, all related to malicious-looking activities. So basically, that means that the infected device's sole purpose was for a malicious activity. So following that observation, we thought, why not investigate it further? At first, we nicknamed the device the Dutchman, obviously from the geolocation of the device, and as we progressed, we gave it another nickname, the Malware Maestro. When we took a look at the accesses of the Maestro, we found 4 interesting ones. 2 of them I want you to direct your attention to, which are raccoon.biz and Stuart.app, which are both connected to the operation of the back end of the Raccoon info stealer malware. If you direct your attention to the green domains and their extensions, you can see that it accessed /logs and reg, which are both not accessed by ordinary users, but more by the administrators or those operating the back end of the Raccoon info stealer malware. These access actually corroborates the hypothesis that the Malware Maestro was at least operating the back end of one kind of malware. Continuing on the accesses, we found those 10 to a dozen really suspicious-looking URLs. The Maestro had administrative credentials for all of them. And when we used our C2 database to flag them, the first 3 had a match. So the first one pertained to the Mystic type of malware, which is a multifunctional malware. The second one was recognized as being part of the private loader C2 known hostnames. And the third one was recognized as being part of the Asuka Trojans C2 malware family. As you can see, the remaining URLs follow quite a similar pattern. And this pattern is actually consistent with C2 operations, where you hash the victim's name or ID to maintain some kind of anonymity. So here we are in the presence of someone actually operating 4 known families and type of malware, which are the Raccoon InfoStealer, the Mystic multifunctional malware, the private loader, which is a malware loader, and the Asuka Trojans. And the remaining ones, we don't even know if they're other types of malware, but it suggests the Maestro was actually operating kind of the comprehensive malicious ecosystem. Using that hypothesis, we tried to draw what would be happening backstage and how it would be used to maximize the exploitation of a target. So now I'm going to be presenting to you the Maestro Symphony, which is in 4 movements, 1 for each type of malware. And it is a quadruple threat symphony, where each piece of malware will build on the previous capabilities of the others. The first movement of the symphony is led by Private Loader. As the name suggests, Private Loader is a malware loader, and its primary function is to deliver malicious payload onto a compromised system. In our case, to deliver the malicious payloads mean delivering the Trojan, the InfoStealer, or the Mystic malware. This first movement is the initial infection. Then the first wave of malware would come by. And this is the multifunctional malware, like Mystic. Mystic, once deployed, can execute multiple tasks in order to exploit the compromised system, such as, for example, stealing data, keylogging, or even creating persistence. This second movement really is all about system exploitation in various ways. Then the second wave of payload can be delivered by the loader. This time it could be the InfoStealer, Raccoon. Raccoon leads the third movement of this malware symphony, and it is all about data extraction. An InfoStealer malware like the Raccoon Stealer, once installed by the loader, will extract all the valuable data from your device, like login credentials, wallets, or even cookies, to then sell them or use them for further exploitation. Then last but not least, the fourth and last movement of the malware symphony would be to deliver the Asuka Trojans. A Trojan like Asuka is designed to deceive users by masquerading itself as a legitimate software so that malicious activities can go undetected. It helps maintain control over the compromised system, could disable security feature, and create persistent backdoors so that the attacker keeps an access to the compromised device even when it's restarted, basically. This fourth movement was all about persistence and control. And as you can see here, all movements create a very comprehensive malicious ecosystem where each type of malware would build on the capabilities of the previous one in order to maximum exploitation. Here, the loader would be essential for the initial breach, bypassing initial defense, and then deliver multiple waves of malware. Then, multifunctional malware like Mystic would maximize exploitations in various ways. InfoStealer like Raccoon would extract valuable data. And finally, Trojan like Asuka would ensure persistence and stealth. I would direct your attention on the fact that this ecosystem is based solely on the 4 types of malware we could identify based on the known C2s we had in the database. If you remember earlier, we had identified more than 10 URLs looking exactly like the ones from those families, meaning that the ecosystem could have been even more complex using even more types of malware. The key takeaways I would like you to go home with are, first, that InfoStealer and stealer logs can be a window to someone's digital activity. Here, they allowed us to enter the backstage of a complex, malicious infrastructure and study the services and the behavior of the individual inside. The second key takeaway is regarding the identification of yet unknown C2 endpoints. Here, by following the trace of known C2 endpoints, we were able to discover new and previously unknown potential IOCs. And if we get to verify them and enter them into a C2 database, then we could do it all over again and try to identify new ones with those newly identified, and then everybody would be happy, basically. This method was not yet tested, but it is an interesting research avenue as a method to identify those new C2 endpoints that we wouldn't know yet about. That would conclude the presentation. I will thank you all for your attention, and I will try my best to answer any questions you would have regarding the presentation. Thank you. Yes, I can.
Did you make any attempts with the data that you collected to attempt any sort of open source collection on the Maestro, or attempt like personal identification of that individual?
So the question was, did we attempt to basically identify the identity of the Maestro? The answer is we tried, but didn't yield any interesting results. We tested every email we saw, but nothing really came up. And based on the accesses they had, we also guessed that it was not a Dutchman, probably someone from somewhere else using VPNs and everything, so we were not really successful in that one. I'm guessing yes. I couldn't really hear the last bit of the question.
I'm sorry. Why aren't these C2 servers, the info-stealers run, why aren't they themselves better protected from infection by other info-stealers?
That's a great question. I'm guessing, to the best of my knowledge, is they're not the best secured individuals sometimes, and they can make errors. Sometimes when you download a stealer log, it's laced with another info-stealer malware. So the infection could have come from basically anything if it's not protected enough.